So welcome to Module 4. In this module, we're going to continue talking about follow-up. How do you consistently follow up so you can maximize the value of all the traffic, all the advertising, and all the lead flow that you're getting? So specifically, here's what we're going to be covering. We're going to be looking at webinars. We're going to be looking at phone follow-up, live events. I'm also going to show you how to do special promotions, and I am going to be talking about social communities as well. So let's dive right in. According to Demand Gen, 95% of buyers choose a solution provider that provided them with ample content to help navigate through each stage of the buying process. And this one's from Forrester. Companies that nurture leads make 50% more sales at a cost 33% less than non-nurtured leads. In other words, if you are not following up right now, you are leaving a lot of money on the table. Now, what I want to talk about next is webinars and how you can utilize webinars in your business. I've been using webinars now since 2010 and have made lots and lots of money with them. If I added it all up, it would probably be in the millions of dollars. It's event-based, so in other words, they have to schedule their time to come and watch, so you've got more of their attention. Some benefits of a webinar: you can include an interactive question and answer session. Now, why is this so important? Well, in your sales process, especially when you're launching it and when you're learning about what makes people buy it and what do they want, what don't they want, when you can get live feedback on a webinar, you can read their questions. It's just incredible market intelligence. You can find out exactly what your prospects want, and you can continue to fine-tune your entire customer acquisition process. They happen in real time. So like I said before, people will schedule the webinar on their calendar or on their phone, and they're actually showing up to hear you. There's a big difference between someone just stumbling across, say, a sales video and watching it in the moment and then being interrupted, and them actually scheduling time and then physically going and sitting down at their computer to hear you. Say it could be on a Wednesday night, 9 p.m. They put that time in their diary, and now you've just got a lot more of their attention. And because they know that they can't just pause it or they can't just come back to it later because it's live, you remove yet another barrier that gets in the way of whether people buy or not. They also help to build social proof. So if you can get a lot of people on a webinar or give the appearance that there's a lot of people on the webinar, it's just demonstrating enormous social proof. Nothing is more powerful than when you're doing a webinar and you might have 200 people, or I've done webinars up to 1,000 people, and it's just enormous social proof when they hear about that. So if you can get those kind of numbers, don't hide that. Make sure you're talking about that on the live webinar. You're talking about that in the lead up to the webinar. And if you can't yet get those numbers because you're just starting out, that's okay. You don't need to mention it. So let's look at some actual real life results. And these are my own results that we've had here at Mobe. So we do, like I said, a lot of webinars. I want to show you what the potential is and what kind of numbers are average. Now, what you're looking at here, this is for a $10,000 price point, and this is for a program that we have where one of our consultants, they can actually get an ebook that we write for them. We actually do 95% of the work. I author it, and they get to list their name as a co-author. We build the entire sales funnel for them, and the whole service is $10,000. Now, we had, in this particular case, we had 179 people register for the live webinar. So we started promoting it about 3 days prior. So usually on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we do it on a Thursday evening. But we also do a lot of different times and days as well. So out of the 179 registrations, 97 actually showed up on the live webinar. Now, this would have gone for about 90 minutes to 2 hours. I tend to do longer webinars. You don't need to do them as long as I do, but in this case, that's what it was. And out of those 97 people, 2 went ahead and brought. So if you're looking at conversion rates, slightly more than 2%, I don't really care too much about conversion rates. What I care about is what you see down the bottom, dollars per attendee. I'm looking at what did the average attendee spend. So that's the main metric that I look at. And I also look at that when we do our live events. So when we have people actually show up to a live event, I look at total revenue from the room divided by number of people in the room. Same thing with your webinar. So total revenue was $20,000. On average, each person on that webinar spent $206. So imagine if you had this in your business. My question to you is, would you be willing to spend, say, $50 to get someone to show up to the webinar? Of course you would. You spend $50 and on average you get back over $200. So this one turned out quite well. Anything over $200 per head, at least in the industry that I'm in, selling education and marketing, training and so forth, that's a pretty good result. Here's another one. So this was for another person's program. This was called the 10-10-10 program, and this was an outside speaker. Okay, one of our titanium trainers by the name of Raymond Aaron. He came along, did a webinar to our audience, and his price point was $2,800. Now we had 1,065 people register for this webinar, so quite a lot more than what you just saw in the last one. 311 showed up. Now this is fairly average. Typically you're going to have about a third of the registrations show up. Although the averages across the board for all types of different industries, it's actually somewhere higher. It's somewhere over 40%. In the internet marketing niche, it's probably going to be lower because people are just bombarded with webinars. They go to so many different webinars that it's going to be slightly less. But 311 people showed up. 21 sales, so total revenue was $58,800, giving you a dollars per attendee of $189. Now, this is also a really good result. Here's another one. So this one was called Mode Max Conversion Formula. Not one of my programs. This was an outside speaker. $997, over 1,000 people registered, 320 showed up, 29 sales, total revenue was $51,844, and dollars per attendee was $162. Now here's another one. This was for the Done For You webinar. So this is a $10,000 service we have where we will create an automated webinar for our consultants to sell our programs. And then all they have to do is just get people to register for the webinar. They show up, it plays every single night, and as long as they get enough people to show up, they're able to get sales and make over $1,000 on every sale. So we had 172 people register, 75 showed up. We got 4 sales from this, so total revenue was $40,000. Dollars per attendee was $666. Now this is definitely one of the best ones I've ever done. If I could do this on every webinar, I'd be very happy with that. And part of the reason why this one works so well, whenever we're selling high ticket, say over $10,000, we don't actually take the payment directly on the webinar. What we do is at the end, we say, if you would like to apply or if you're interested, send an email to this email address. And then we go on to explain that someone on our team will follow up on the phone, and we actually do the sales one-on-one on the phone. So when you're selling really high ticket, and by that I mean anything over say $2,000, often it's better to sell one-on-one rather than just say telling them to go to an online order form. If you're selling at a price point of say under $200, then you definitely would just send them to an order form online. Okay, you probably wouldn't be getting on the phone with every single one of them one-on-one. Here's another one. So this was also from an outside speaker. The price point on this one was almost $5,000. 681 people registered. 346 people showed up. Now I want to comment on this for just a moment. You might have noticed that the show ratio, so the percentage of people who registered who then showed up, is different on all of these. Sometimes it's 30%, sometimes it's actually over 40%. I mean, this is almost, this is actually over 50% in this case. So what determines that? It's a number of different things. Number one, how appealing is the webinar? So are they going to register and then it's so appealing that they will want to make sure they show up? So that's definitely one of the main leverage points. But also it's your follow-up between registration and actually doing the webinar. So if you're only sending them one email reminder, then your show ratio is usually going to be lower. But if you send them 2 or 3, if you're doing text message follow-up, if you're also doing social media, reminding them, so multiple channels besides just email marketing, then your show ratios are going to go up. Okay, so it's all about these little leverage points, and it can make a big difference in the scheme of things. So we had 7 sales here. Total revenue was $34,895, so dollars per attendee, $234. Now, those are the good results. Let me show you some of our poor results, and I'll show you just a couple here. So the first one was, this was an outside speaker, and when we first started doing these webinars, we weren't selling the higher priced products of $1,000 and above, and that was our first mistake. In our particular industry, if you look at all the different results from selling low price to higher price points in webinars, generally anything above $1,000 is going to give you a higher dollar per head. If you're selling, in this case, like a $37 product, a webinar is a little bit of an overkill. You can actually sell a $37 product all day long with just a sales video or a sales letter. You don't really need to do a webinar to sell it. You still can, you definitely can still try it, but as you can see in this example, it didn't work that well. Now, it could also be because the person doing the actual selling wasn't very good. There's a number of different factors. It could be that their offer was the wrong offer for our particular audience. That's also a possibility. But in this case, 558 people registered, 186 showed up, only 8 units sold. So the dollars per attendee was $1.59. It wasn't even worth doing it. Here's another one. So this was for a $97 phone sales program. A great program, but again, it just didn't go so well. We had 284 people attend, 53 sales, but only $18 per attendee. So in these kind of cases, we have definitely learned that we want to raise the price. We want to be doing over $1,000. And I've found that when you start offering $10,000 programs and above, and you actually drive them to an application process where you follow up one-on-one, preferably by phone, then your dollars per attendee will be way higher. But you've got to have a certain critical mass before you can do that. If you can only get 4 or 5 people on a webinar because you're just starting out, then the chance of you selling a $10,000 program, it's going to be lower. If you know that you can consistently get 50, 100 people on a webinar, then you really do have the critical mass to be doing $10,000 offers and above. Here's another one. So this one actually produced 93 sales from 290 people. So the conversion rate here, if we're looking at buyers compared to attendees, it's enormous. It's over 30%. So in other words, 1 out of 3 people who were on this webinar were buying. But because the price point was so low, dollars per attendee was only $24. So you want to set up your own webinar. What's the first thing you need to do? Well, I'll show you the technical side of it in just a moment, but you're going to need to have a webinar registration page. This is the page that people land on, and it's going to have a headline, it's going to have a registration call to action and a field where they can enter their name, email, and then they can show up when the webinar goes live. So what do you need on your webinar registration page? You need a headline, obviously. You need a headline that explains what the webinar is going to be about. And this is really, really important. I've got clients who I advise to do webinars, and when they start out, often they're not getting many registrations. And the first thing I do is I tell them, well, it's because your topics, your titles, what you're telling people your webinar is going to be about is boring. It's not engaging, it's not exciting, there's not a big promise, there's not a big pain point that you're overcoming. So the topic, the title, is one of the highest leverage points in how many people will actually show up. Now below that, you're going to have a list of benefits that people will get when they do show up to your webinar. So you've got to tell them, here's what you're going to learn, here's all the pain, the struggle that you're going to avoid as a result of having this information. You've really got to sell why they should give up 45 minutes of their time, 90 minutes of their time. You've got to really sell them on why they should do that, because people are busy. People are busy in their everyday lives. So you've got to give them a lot of really good reasons to want to show up. Very clear date and time of the webinar. So this is another big mistake I see. And it's not just for webinars, it's also for all live events. When people try and promote live events or webinars, often they don't put the date and the time in an obvious enough place and they don't make it prominent enough. It's hidden away. So if your viewer has to go searching, they have to go looking to find the date, to find the time, then it's just another barrier that gets in the way of them registering or even just showing up. Brief, host, biography, and photo. So if you're going to be hosting the webinar, tell them who you are. Give them a brief overview of who you are and why they should listen to you. Testimonials if you have them, and also very clear details on exactly how to register. Spell it out, make it really clear. So let's have a look at a few examples. This one is Frank Kern, so it's very simple. A headline that says, Advanced Sales and Persuasion Tactics for Having a High-Paying Consulting Business. I want in, that's the call to action. So he's got a picture there. Most of the internet market, they already know who he is. He's got a very prominent day, time, the date. You can see it's actually mentioned there twice. And he's put it in 2 time zones too, so 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. His main market is going to be the USA, so he's covering both sides of America there. On this live webinar, you will discover. So that's a great lead-in for your benefits, your bullet points. New, the 7-step irresistible intrigue method for getting hot leads. The collaborative close, that technique that turns complete strangers into paying clients. Now, I just noticed that's an error in his sentence, but it doesn't matter. He still makes a lot of money with this, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes when you launch this fast, and that's okay. A low-tech way to get new clients fast. How I'm able to make 26 times more than the average consultant, even though I have no credentials. So it's very simple. And then at the bottom, he's got another call to action and talks about how it's 100% free. And also there will be no recorded replay offered. That's important because these days the market is more sophisticated when it comes to webinars, especially in his niche, the internet marketing niche. So they know that if they don't show up to the live webinar, they're probably going to be sent a replay video where they can watch it at their convenience. So that's another barrier for them not showing up. So if you want to maximize your show ratio, you can tell people that you won't be sending out a replay, and therefore, if they want to see it, they've got to show up to the live one. Here's one I did. So this was promoting a traffic service. Headline was, learn how to have someone else bring floods of 21-step leads to your business to never worry about traffic again. Learn from the guy who's generated over 800,000 leads in his online business. So you'll notice I have the day, the time. I've converted it to multiple time zones. Very clear call to action, get on the training, and a few bullet points down the bottom. Now here's another one. This one's a bit of a different design. Learn the $120 million traffic secrets with Mobe founder and CEO Matt Lloyd. Register now. So you can play around with different layouts, different designs. I'll put more of these in your manual so you can have a look. Feel free to model them, especially the Mobe ones. But it's quite simple. Headline, bullet points, bio, very clear call to action on how to get on the webinar and time and date. So let's talk about how you structure your live sales webinar. Now, when I say structure, I mean the particular order that the different segments come in. So for example, the opening, the close, the transition. This is where a lot of people get it wrong. They have things out of order. So I'm going to share with you how do you set this whole thing up so that it's going to pull at the maximum response rate. So the very first thing you need when you do your webinar is you want to remind them of here's what the webinar is about. So literally I might start the webinar just like this. I would say something like, good evening everyone, welcome to tonight's live webinar. It's Matt Lloyd calling in from Kuala Lumpur. It's just gone 9 p.m. Eastern and we're going to go ahead and make a start. As promised, tonight's webinar is going to show you whatever my title is, and that's it. I mean, that's how I would start the webinar. Usually I will do a sound and visual check as well. So I will say something like, by the way, before we get started, do me a favor, go ahead and type into the comment box and tell me if my audio is coming through loud and clear. And then if I'm sharing my screen, which I'll show you how to do all of this below, okay, or in this video, I'll show you how to actually use GoToWebinar. But if I'm sharing my screen, I will also ask, you should be able to see my screen right now. Go ahead and type in if you can see it. and then I'm checking the comment box. And then what I usually like to do is, if it's a live webinar and there's not that many people on it, I will call people out by name. Actually, I might say something like, go ahead and type in where you're calling in from or where you're based. And then if they type in, I will say things like, okay, welcome Greg from California, welcome Mary from Sydney, Australia, welcome Doug from Texas. And by doing that, you connect more with your audience. Because Doug from Texas, he's sitting at home behind his computer and he actually hears you, the webinar presenter, who in his mind, you might be the big guru, the big expert, the teacher, the trainer, and you are recognizing him. And suddenly he realizes, wow, this is all very real and this is actually, I'm getting some one-on-one attention. So by doing that, you will dramatically increase your conversion rates. You really will. You'll build a much stronger connection with your live audience. So I like to do that. Now, the next thing I do is I talk about, here's what I'm going to be covering on tonight's webinar. So this is really just your bullet points, the main benefits that you had listed on your registration page. And actually, before I even get to that, I will give a quick bio. So I might say something like, in my case, I might say, now, if you're on this webinar, I assume that you already know who I am because I sent out the invite to my list. But for those who don't know me, let me give you just a quick 2-minute recap of who I am and why you should listen to me. So my name's Matt Lloyd, I'm from Perth, Australia, and I got into internet marketing back in late 2009, blah, blah, blah. So I go through my story. You don't want to make it too long-winded. Some people will go into this long 15-minute overview of their entire biography and where they went to high school and all of that. You don't need to do that, okay? Just give a short, to-the-point biography of who you are and really why you're qualified to be in this position that you're in right now, presenting the webinar. Why are you qualified to be teaching them something or sharing content? So then, at this point, then I will say, here's what we're going to be covering on tonight's webinar. And I'll go through the 3 or 4 big main ideas that I'm going to be sharing with them. Then you can have a stick strategy. Now, this is a more advanced thing that you can do. You don't need to do this if you're doing your first sales webinar. But as you get more practice, as you get more confident at it, then you can have a stick strategy. So just because someone shows up to your live webinar, it doesn't mean they're going to hang around until the very end. And we want them to hang around until the very end because that's where we're going to have our close. That's where we're going to actually make an offer and have them go ahead and do business with us. So your stick strategy is where you're almost dangling out a carrot in front of them and saying, if you stick around until the very end of this live webinar, you will get the carrot, okay? You will get this free gift. Now, what can the free gift be? Well, in the past, in my case, it's been an ebook, it's been some free report, it could be a free video recording. It's something that has enough value that people would desire it, that even if your webinar is average, which I hope it's not, but even if it is average, they would still sit through it for an hour just to get the free gift. Okay, hopefully your webinar is going to be great, but you want to give them every extra little reason to hang around until the very end. So that's what I've done in my case. You might offer, it could be a price discount, although that's about the last thing I would want to offer, but it could be a bonus product. It could be something that complements your main product. And I will say this, whatever you offer at the very end, it should support the main sale, the main offer. Whatever you are selling on that webinar, let's say it's a $1,000 product, that product, the gift, should actually talk up the product and support the sale. It should highlight the benefits, overcome the objections, so that even if they don't buy on the live webinar, they get the free gift sent to them, and you're going to send it to them one by one or have someone on your team do it. But when they get that gift, it's like a second chance to make the sale. Now, the main body of your webinar is usually going to be 3 or 4 core points, okay, main points. And people, when they do this for the first time, the majority of students that I have, they overcomplicate it, they stress about it, and they worry, well, what am I meant to be talking about for an entire 45 minutes or an hour? And once you start talking on a topic that you're passionate about or that you're interested in, talking for 45 minutes is actually really easy. It really is. So you want to have 3 or 4 main overriding ideas. Now these ideas, again, should always support the main sale. So don't be giving content that doesn't support the main offer at the very end. Everything you say, literally, every single line that you say should be supporting the main offer at the very end. Now, when you do this for the very first time, it's probably not going to be that dialed in. But over time, as you practice, you've really got to think strategically about what gets included and what doesn't. Now, when I'm doing my webinars, you can imagine I'm sitting behind my computer, behind this very laptop right here, and I will have my slides on Keynote or on PowerPoint, whatever you prefer to use. And they can't see me, okay, unless I turn my webcam on. On a live webinar, usually I won't have it on. On a live stream, then yes, they would be able to see me. But on a live webinar, I'm sitting behind my computer, I've got my headset on, just a cheap $40 USB headset, that's all you need. And I make my slides full screen, and then using GoToWebinar, which I'll introduce you to in just a moment, which is what I use to host a webinar, I'm able to share my screen and they see everything that I see on my screen. And then I'm walking them through the slides. Okay, that's really all I'm doing. Now at the end, you want to have a transition, and the transition is just a short 1 or 2 minute important segment into the close. The transition is where you give the reason for your offer. So for example, it might look something like this. You might say, let's say you were talking about their big problem that they have, and your webinar was about some solutions for overcoming that problem. You might say something like, so on tonight's webinar, we've been talking now for at least 45 minutes, and I've shown you how to do this, I've shown you how to do that, and then I've shown you how to do this. And you're probably looking at all of this thinking, wow, that's great. I can see this really working, but this is going to take a lot of time to implement. This is going to take a lot of time to go and do. I wish that someone would just do it all for me. And you know what? There was a certain point in my life where I was going through the same problem that you're going through, and I wish the same thing. And that's exactly why I decided just very recently to put together a brand new program where I would actually do all the work for you. And I'd like to tell you about it now. Who on this live webinar right now would like to know how I can do all of that implementation for you? All right, well, let me tell you about it. And then you would go into the actual presentation of your solution, your product, your service, whatever it is. So I hope you saw what I just did. That's just a 2-minute little segment where you give a reason why you came up with the offer and why you're now about to start presenting it, and then go into the price and the close. Now, when you are doing the presentation of the product or service and you are doing the close, you've got to do it with conviction. They have to hear that in your voice. They have to hear the tone. They have to hear that you actually believe in what you're offering. That's the first thing. If you don't believe in your product or service, and that for them it's the very best decision they could possibly make to go ahead and buy it, they're going to hear that. Okay, so make sure that whatever you're selling, you really believe that they are getting a great deal. They will hear that in your voice. When you are presenting it, you've got to do it with enthusiasm. Sometimes when I'm doing a webinar, I can start to talk in a bit of a monotone because I have a naturally monotone kind of voice. So I have to force myself to be a little bit more excited so they can hear that in my tone. If you watch all the great infomercials and all the great pitchmen who do the infomercials, like the late Billy Mays, for example, if you go and watch them on YouTube and you watch how they do the infomercial, they're very excited in their presentation, and that excitement, it's contagious. The viewer sees it. So on your live webinar, you've got to manifest that same kind of excitement so they can hear it in your voice. Now, after you've gone through and you've shown what the product is, you've talked about the benefits, the price, you've revealed the price, then you want to tell them exactly how they can go ahead and they can buy it. Now, this is where you need to spell out very clearly what they need to do. So if I'm telling them to go to a website, I will say it like this. I will say, if you're ready to go ahead and take action, what you need to do next is go to www.workwithmattlloyd.com. That's 2 T's and 2 L's. Go ahead and go to www.workwithmattlloyd.com. So I will spell it out slowly like that, and I won't just say that once or twice. I will actually say that probably about 10 times throughout the last 15-20 minutes of the webinar. So you say it multiple times, because the first time they hear it, they might not write it down, or they might not remember it, or they might not yet be ready to buy. But as you keep on talking, 10 minutes later, they are ready to buy, and you want it to be right in front of them. Also, if you are presenting slides, make sure you have that website address very clearly at the bottom on multiple slides so they can't miss it. Okay, make sure all the spelling is there. Make it an easy website address for them to go to. Don't have it be some big long link. So get a nice, easy to type in domain name. That's important. You can get one for less than $12 from GoDaddy.com. So that's all you need. Now at the very end, you can also take questions on a live webinar. So if they have any comments, you can encourage them to go ahead, ask any questions. And what you want to do is always have a few planted questions ready. Okay, just in case no one types in a question. Otherwise, you're going to hear crickets. All right, so you want to make sure that you have 3 or 4 questions that you've written down, and you can use some names, Harry, Sally, whatever you want to use, whatever you're comfortable with, and pick questions that your audience is likely to have, and also questions that overcome objections. So a question could be, it could be about the guarantee. The question could be, so Harry has asked, does this really come with a money-back guarantee? And your answer might be, yes, it does, and here's what the terms are. So every question is designed strategically to overcome objections and also heighten the benefits. Okay, and then once you've read out a couple of those, usually you will start to get some live questions coming in after that. So let's talk about how do you actually do this from a technical standpoint. Now, I use something called GoToWebinar, and you can see that at gotowebinar.com. I've been using this now since 2010. It's certainly not the only one out there, but it's one that I'm comfortable with, and I'm comfortable endorsing it, recommending it to you, and I've always had a good experience with it. It's about $99 per month. And if you want to get a better account, when I say better, I mean it can hold more people on the live webinar, you can actually pay right up to $1,000 per month. Now, I know you probably don't want to pay that just yet. You don't need to. When you're starting out, if you have less than 100 people who are going to show up to your webinar, then you can definitely use just the $99 per month account. And don't quote me on the price. By the time you go there, it could have gone up, but that's what it is currently. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to gotowebinar.com. Currently, they do have a 30-day free trial. Sign up for it, follow their steps. It's very simple, very straightforward. And then once you log in, after you've signed up for that free account, you're going to click on Schedule a Webinar. And that's where you're going to put in your title, your description. You're going to choose the date and the time. Make sure you double check the date and the time. Can't tell you the number of times that I've scheduled a webinar and then realized that I accidentally put it 1 week into the future. Okay, so be careful with that. Invite people to register. Easier said than done, but it really is quite easy. The first place that you're going to go is your list. If you have a list of prospects, then you're going to send out an email and start inviting them, usually about 3 days prior to the webinar. If you don't yet have a list, that's okay. You can promote it on social media. You could promote it on Facebook. You can promote it in numerous different places. You could run paid advertising directly to the registration page. But like I said before, usually I will start promoting about 3 days prior to the live webinar. And what I like to do is I'll promote it 72 hours prior. I'll then send out another message about 48 hours prior, and then 24 hours prior, and then sometimes even 1 hour prior. And what I like to do is I also like to segment all the people who registered from my main list, put them into a new segment, and they get more reminder messages than the main list because they've already indicated, yes, they're interested. Now, to actually start your webinar, you're going to go back to your GoToWebinar account, You will log in and you will go there right on your main page. You will see all the webinars you have coming up, and you will simply click on Start Webinar. And it's going to download the software for GoToWebinar. That won't take more than, say, a minute at most. And then it will automatically appear on your computer screen. And when it shows up, it's going to look a little bit like this. You will have a control panel. You're the only one who can see this specific control panel. All the people who are watching your webinar, they can't see what you see. Okay, and it's not yet live. Once that control panel comes up, it hasn't yet gone live. For it to go live, you actually click on Start Webinar, and then everyone suddenly can hear you. You're wearing your headset, they can hear you. They can't yet see what's on your screen until you click on the Show My Screen button. Once you click on that, then now they can. Now you can also see all the people on the attendees. So by clicking on Attendee List, you'll be able to see all the names of the people. And even if no one's on the webinar, start it anyway, because sometimes people are late. So just because no one showed up, don't cancel the webinar. Keep on doing it. They might show up 15 minutes later. Now, as for the questions, you'll be able to see all the questions, comments, that will appear in your control panel as well. So what I recommend you do, get comfortable with using this before you go and do your live webinar. Set up a test webinar, send it to a friend, and call them on the phone, and then do the live webinar. And while they're on the phone, just ask them, what do you see? What do you hear? Just get used to it. Now here on the attendee list, as you're asking questions, you can also be telling people or asking people, raise your hand, click on that little yellow hand icon if you agree, or if you have this problem, or if you want this solution. So they can click on this little yellow hand icon, and you can see all the people clicking on that. You can also do polls too. So if you want to do a poll and ask them, which of these 4 things are you most frustrated with in your current life, or with this current topic, whatever your niche is, then you can actually be getting live feedback on the webinar. The more engaging and the more interactive you can make it, the better. Okay, the better. The only problem with doing that is when it comes to automating the live webinar, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, then obviously you lose that ability to make it live and interactive. Now at the very end, this is what I like about GoToWebinar. You can actually see reports. You can see reports on who registered. You can get their name, email address. You can actually download that as a spreadsheet. This is all in your back office when you log into GoToWebinar. You can also see engagement reports too. So you can see how many people showed up, how attentive they were. Did they have different things open on their computer screen at home when you were doing your live webinar? You can actually see, did they have multiple tabs open? You can't see what they were, but GoToWebinar will give you a little engagement score to tell you how much attention they were giving to your presentation. So it's a really cool feature. It also saves all of their questions. So at the end of the webinar, if you didn't get a chance to answer all the questions or address the comments, you can download the report, see exactly what questions they asked, and you might find that there's some potential bias there from their comments or questions that you want to follow up with one-on-one later on. So let's talk about recording your webinar. Now, why would you want to record your webinar? Well, for a number of reasons. Number one, it's content creation. You can take that webinar, which might have gone for an hour, you can record it, and all the content pieces, you can cut that up, make shorter videos, put it on YouTube or some other video platform, and start getting your content out there. So it's a way to leverage your efforts. You do the webinar once, and then you're able to leverage that work for really the rest of your life. The content can be out there for the next few decades. The other reason why you want to record your webinar is you can send the replay to all the people who missed showing up to the live webinar, which is usually going to be about 2/3 of all the people who registered. So there's still a lot of potential sales in that 2/3. But the other reason why you want to record it is you can take that video recording and you can automate it. You can set up a live automated webinar where, when I say live, I mean it simulates a live webinar. It's a live replay of the video, but the people watching won't necessarily know that. And there's no issue with that. As long as it's a live replay of the video, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there really isn't. So you can do that, and that's why you want to record it. So how do you record it? Let me show you some different options. Now, this is ScreenFlow. So if you're on a Mac, you might consider using ScreenFlow. I've used it a few times. It's good. A lot of people use it. But the one that I use is called Camtasia. I've been using Camtasia for a long time. If you haven't used it before, it is a little bit of a steep learning curve at first. And when you first see all of this, it's going to look very complicated. But trust me, if you just plow through it and use it for at least 20-30 minutes, you will soon start to get the hang of it. And all of them have very good help and step-by-step instructions. So they'll show you exactly how to use it. So Camtasia allows you to record anything on your screen, your audio. So you're playing Camtasia, the recording feature, while you're doing the live webinar. And then at the very end, you press stop, and now you have a video file. And then you're able to edit that video file. You're able to edit out all the parts you don't want. So if you make a mistake, that's fine. You can cut all of that out. You can add in animations. You can do lots of different things. And if you don't want to do any of that, you can actually hire someone else to do it for you. I'll show you how to hire someone else to handle this for you a little bit later on. Now, if you don't want to go and get any of those solutions, GoToWebinar itself will actually allow you to record with their platform. So when that little GoToWebinar control panel comes up, there's actually a record button, and you can click that and it will automatically record and save it onto your computer. The only reason why I don't like to do that is because sometimes the format that they record in is not the format that I want. But a lot of people will use that, so again, just try it, okay? The best way to learn this is to actually go and do it and just try it, see if it works for you. There's a few other options here. I'm going to put these in your manual. I don't specifically endorse any one of these over the other, except for Camtasia. Camtasia, I really do like. Let's look at some pros and cons of automating your live webinars. Why would you want to do it? So first of all, the cons. What's the downside of having an automatic webinar where it's playing every day or several times a day, and all you're doing is inviting people to show up? Well, there's a few little downsides of it. Often when people are watching your automated webinar, the more sophisticated ones, when I say sophisticated, I mean they've attended more webinars than the average person, they may be able to tell. So for example, if I'm on an automated webinar, someone else's, I can usually tell whether it's live or not. But there are ways that you can actually disguise that quite well. But often there's little clues that it's not actually live. For example, the first most obvious one is if they can see a play bar, then clearly anyone would know that's not live. So most of the good automated webinar software, and again, I'll put details below this video on which ones to use, how to use them, but most of the good ones, they will hide any control bar and definitely hide the ability to be able to pause the replay and give away that it's a video. And by the way, if all of this sounds sneaky and like we're trying to trick people, we're not. We're definitely not. All we're doing is we're adding in automation into our business. The customer, the people attending the webinar, they're still getting the same experience, they're still getting the same value, as long as you don't lie about it being this is a live webinar, then it's fine. Okay, you can just say welcome to tonight's webinar, and tonight will be tonight for the rest of time, okay, depending on when it shows. So it's perfectly fine to use automated webinars, and lots of people do. The other downside is that there's no live interaction. So if someone has a question, let's say they have their credit card out, they're ready to buy, they're at the very end of the replay of your webinar, but they just have one final question. The downside of an automated webinar is you're not there to answer the question, overcome the objection, and have them move forwards with the sale. However, with a lot of the good automated webinar software, they can type in their question and it will actually get emailed to you or to someone on your team, and then you can follow up later on. And the other downside is that you can't feature live testimonials. One of the most successful tactics when doing a webinar is to have live testimonials. In other words, if you have clients who've got amazing results with your business, you can feature them on the webinar. So you'll get towards the end, or you could even be doing this throughout, and to make the webinar more interesting, you can say, I've got a special guest, here's what her name is, and here's their background, and I've actually invited them. here onto the live webinar. You bring them out and then you do an interview style Q&A where you ask them about their problem that they had before they get your product or service, why they decided to get your product or service, how their life is different, and then would they recommend it to other people. Of course, you want them to say yes, and you would only invite them if they're going to say yes. So they really just give a live testimonial on the webinar for your product or service, and that can really help. You can't do that on an automated webinar, at least as effectively. You can't be fielding live questions from the audience around that. Let's look at some of the pros, and to me the pros far outweigh the cons. Number one, you get your life back. You don't have to be doing webinars for 2 hours a night, every night for the rest of your life. You can do it once or twice or 3 times until you've got that perfect version or close to perfect version, but then you can automate it, and then you don't have to be there anymore. It's playing every single day. And let me just tell you a quick little story just to make my point. So just a few days ago, I received a message from a lady who said to me, Matt, I hope you're all right. I hope you're all right because I heard your voice on the live webinar. And I said, what are you referring to? What do you mean? Because I hadn't done a live webinar. And she said, well, 2 nights ago, you were doing a live webinar and you were talking about this, you were talking about that. And I wasn't even there. It was an automated webinar, but she couldn't tell. And this was a seasoned internet marketer. So I didn't have to be there, and I had that all the time. So all around the world, people are attending my live automated webinars, and I've got dozens of them now. They're all selling different price points. Some are selling $1,000 products. Some are selling products that are between $25,000 and up to $100,000. They're generating phone applications, phone lead applications. We're then following up, and we're able to do those sales. So, like I said, you get your life back, you save a lot of time, and that's the whole point of this program, is that you build a customer acquisition process that runs independently of you. An automated webinar is the perfect example of that. It really is. You can make the presentation perfect and always have the best version showing. When you're doing live webinars all the time, you're going to have your off nights, you're going to have your bad performances, and it could be because you just don't feel 100%. Something's gone wrong that day and your mind is just not on the webinar, but believe me, you will have them. Maybe you get sick, you've got a cold. Well, with an automated live webinar, you can get your very most perfect version. You can then go and edit it in Camtasia so you make it even more perfect, and then you always have that optimum perfect version showing all around the world, wherever your leads, your prospects are. You can sell 24/7, 365 days of the year. So even on Christmas Day, even on New Year's, people will still be attending your live automated webinar. You can be getting sales coming in. And you know this is working when you wake up in the morning and you see sales that have come in overnight from your automated webinars. That's really what you're trying to get to here. So like I said, I'm going to put videos below this one in this module that will walk you through how to set up the automated live webinar. So just follow them step by step. It might be a little bit of a learning curve in the beginning. Again, if you don't want to do it, you can hire someone else to do it. But believe me, this is high leverage work. This is the kind of work that you want to get done because you do it once, but then it can be paying you again and again for the rest of your life. So let's talk about phone follow-up. Let's switch gears and go into an entirely different mode of follow-up. The phone. With the phone, Mob has been able to generate probably somewhere over 35–40% of all of its revenue in the last 5 years alone. The phone, without the phone, Mob, the company, would be much smaller. It really would. It would probably be about 20% or at least 30% the size it is today. And I first started using the phone to make sales actually way back in 2009. Not very well, not very effectively, but now I don't do so many phone sales calls myself, but I have entire teams of people who do it for me, and it's a very important part of our business model. If you are not using the phone in your business model right now, you are leaving a fortune on the table. So I want to talk to you about how do you do it well, how do you do it, and if you don't want to do it, how do you find people to do it for you and have them do it well. Some stats. In 2007, it took an average of 3.68 cold call attempts to reach a prospect. Today, it takes 8 attempts. So, in other words, if you are following up on the phone, you need to be quite a bit more persistent than you used to be. The average salesperson only makes 2 attempts to reach a prospect. So, in other words, if you're going to do phone sales, you need to persist with it. You need to be following up. It's not something where you make a call once and then you move on. You are going to have to follow up because you're going to be getting voice messages, you're going to be getting people at the wrong time, but it's worth following up. You can sell high ticket products on the phone just about more effectively than anywhere else. The very best phone sales people that I know who do this for a living are able to generate millions and millions of dollars every single year just with a telephone. Okay, so if you can get really good people on your team doing the phone calls, it can add an amazing amount of revenue to your business. So let's talk about how do you sell more effectively on the phone. There's really 5 stages I want to take you through here, and the first stage is rapport. Okay, so when you pick up the phone and you call a prospect or someone on your team does, the first thing that you're trying to get to is rapport. You want to get on that common level of connection where you're on that common wavelength, and if you've ever experienced rapport, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so here's an example. I'm just going to read this out for you. So it might be something like, in this case, I might be calling back someone and I would say something like, "Hi, this is Matt Lloyd calling you back from Perth. I got your application form and I wanted to talk to you. Is this an appropriate time?" And they say, "Sure." And I start by asking them, "Well, do you know what you're looking for?" So I'm assuming in this case, this person has applied somewhere online to work with me or someone on my team or for a consulting package. You've got to take this and apply it to whatever you're selling, your product or service. So do you know what you're looking for? Do you know what you're looking for in a business? And often they're going to say no because they're just getting started, and that's okay in this case. And then I might say something like, "Well, I was curious, what was it about my website or my product that attracted your attention?" Now, why do you do this? The reason why you do this is because whatever action they took to send you their phone number, whether they applied or they clicked on some button requesting a phone call, they were in a state where they wanted to talk to you. Now, 24 hours might have elapsed between them doing that and you actually calling back. So we want to get them back into that state and have them remind themselves of why they actually requested the call initially. So after you've got rapport, the next thing you want to do is you want to go into the discovery stage. This is where you're going to find out more about whatever that problem is that they're having that's got them in the mindset of looking for a solution and therefore seeking out your business. So this is where you're going to ask questions that get them to talk about pain points and also get them to talk about the benefits that they desire. So let's say I'm calling someone back and they've requested some consulting session with me because they want to learn how to, for example, make an income on the internet with high-ticket affiliate marketing. So I might ask them a little bit about their work, how long they were doing that for, how did they get into that, and it's very conversational. It's very conversational. I keep it very relaxed. And you say something like, let's say in this case, they're seeking a change, right? And they're looking to learn how to make money online. I'm going to repeat back to them something like, "So John, you've told me that you've been in this particular job now for 11 years and you got into that from what you told me. Can I ask you a question? If you could do that again, if you could make that decision as to whether you got into that job or not again, would you have done it this way? Or would you have done it that way?" Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I am not the greatest phone salesperson. That's exactly why I have other people on my team do it for me. But these are the main stages they go through. Or I might say something like, "So John, it sounds like things are going pretty good for you, but is there anything you would like to change about what you're doing if you could?" Whatever answers they give you about their pain points or what benefits they want, we always want to ask them to elaborate. Okay, so you want to ask them things like, "So tell me, why is it important to you? Why is it important to you that you solve this problem or that you get this benefit?" The reason why you want them to do that is because typically they're going to give you short, sharp answers, yes, no, and you want them to go into more the reasons behind the reasons. There's a popular trainer out there who likes to say it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. It really is. So each time you ask a question, you're trying to get to those inner layers of the onion. And people will do things for much deeper reasons than they will usually tell you on the surface. So the first answers that they give you are going to be surface level answers. We want to go a little bit deeper than that. That's why we always ask them to elaborate and to tell you more. Now, while they're doing this, you're taking notes. You're taking notes the whole time, or whoever's doing this on your team, they're taking notes, but you're writing all of this down because you're going to be repeating it back to them later on in the call. After we've found out exactly what they're looking for in the discovery stage, now we're going to begin transitioning. And the big mistake that people make in any sales situation is they immediately start talking about their product, their service, how wonderful it is, how it's going to do all of these great things. And what does that usually do? Well, for the average prospect, it repels them. If you've ever walked onto a card lot where they're selling cars, you've had the sales rep come up to you and they immediately go into sales mode and they start trying to sell you and tell you what you might be interested in, it actually repels most people. Okay, most people don't like that hard pressure sales approach because they feel like this person isn't even taking the time to get to know what I want. So the very best salespeople, they're not doing most of the talking, okay? They're definitely not. They are doing most of the questioning. They're asking the right questions at the right time in the right way, and the prospect is doing most of the talking because who has the answers? You as the sales rep, you don't have the answers, the prospect does. And they're going to tell you exactly how you can sell them through their answers. So the very best salespeople in the world are great listeners. They really are. So as for the transitioning stage, so as for what you say here, you're going to repeat back to them everything that they've told you in the discovery stage, and then you're going to feel out whether they're open to making a change. So, John, based on what you've told me, you've been working in this job as a plumber now for the past 9 years. You've told me that the parts you don't like about it is that you're working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and you're barely getting to see your kids growing up. If there was a way that you could start a business, do it from home, and it would require about 2 hours of focused work a day, but if there was a way that you could start that business and replace your entire income that you're making right now as a plumber, would you be open to hearing about how you could do that? Okay, now again, I'm not the greatest salesperson on the phone, I'll tell you that. But what you're doing is you're repeating back to them what they just said, and you're finding out, are they open to hearing about the solution? Now, if you've done all those prior stages correctly, where you've asked a lot of questions and you really listened, of course they're going to say yes, because you're repeating back to them what they just told you. And they felt like they've been listened to in a way that they've never been listened to by any other salesperson out there ever. They won't even think of you as a salesperson. The next thing you're going to do after that is, this is where we actually go into the presenting stage. And this is where you actually start to explain the benefit to whatever it is you're selling, the product, service, but you only focus on the benefits that are important to them. Okay, so you don't, if you have 50 different benefits on your product, you don't go through every single one of those 50 benefits. There might be only 3 benefits that they really care about based on the 3 most serious problems that they have that are affecting them right now. So they might have told you that one of their biggest problems is lack of time to do whatever it is you're talking about. So you talk about the time-saving benefit of your product. They might have told you about the problems, the health problems right now that they're experiencing, and if your product is somehow going to help them with that, you focus on just those benefits around health. So I think you get my point. You only show them the relevant benefits and you really focus on those. Now, the final stage is where we're going to get a commitment. Okay, this is where we want to get a commitment. So you presented your product or your service, they're interested, they're telling you yes, they want to get it. We want to get the final commitment. So it could be something as simple as this. You could say, so John, based on what you've told me and how this conversation has gone, I want to ask you a question, and It's a bit of a funny question really, but if I was to ask you right now on, say, a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being this just isn't for you, and 10 being that this is exactly what you've been looking for, where would you rate yourself right now? Now, you just be quiet until they answer. And let's say they say 8. You're going to repeat back to them, okay, 8, that's quite high. Tell me, why so high? And then again, they're going to be selling themselves. Okay, they're going to be talking about all the reasons why they want to get your product. So all of this is done, by the way, from a position of integrity. We're assuming that whatever we have really is going to help their problems. And if it's not, if what you have, your product or service, isn't going to actually help them with their problems, what we're doing here is, first and foremost, we're finding out, is there a sale to be made in the first place? Because sometimes there's not. Sometimes you're going to discover throughout this call of just asking lots of questions and actually listening that what you have is not a good fit for them, and you would be doing them an injustice by actually selling it to them. So first thing we're trying to do is we're trying to find out, is there a sale to actually be made in the first place? Now, when you start doing the phone sales for your business, you're going to start to develop certain questions that you ask and certain responses. It's been a long time since I've done phone sales in my own business. Again, I have people who do that for me these days, but when I used to do it, way back in 2009, 2010, and even early 2011, at first I was really terrible at it. But by the end, I was getting fairly proficient at it, and I would actually get to the point where every person that I was calling, and I was calling back $97 buyer leads, they had brought one of my front-end products, but about 1 out of 4 were moving forward and actually buying. So what I started to do is I started to actually almost script out the questions I would ask, when I would ask them, and I started to recognize patterns on those calls. So before, not too long, I knew what to say based on their responses. I knew what questions to ask, and you're going to start to experience the same thing. Now, as you do this, you're going to start to develop your own training library, okay, your own training library that you can actually pass on to your reps that you end up hiring, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, and that's going to become a really valuable asset for you. Let's talk about how do you actually go and find the right phone sales reps for you. So first of all, I personally prefer commission only, or a heavy weighting towards commissions as opposed to salary from salespeople. I really do, because you want to pay on performance. If your salespeople, if they are not incentivized to go and make sales for you, if they don't have that hunger to actually go and produce results, then rarely are you going to get good results. And the very best salespeople in the world, they want to get paid on commission. They don't want to get paid a flat base. They want to be heavily incentivized because they know they're good, they know they produce results, and that's how they like to get paid. My very top salespeople that I have on my team right now, the very best ones in their best years have made over $300,000 US. Some of them even more than that. And they're only able to make that kind of money because they're so good at what they do. Whereas the worst ones, the ones who don't last that long, they weren't able to make much money at all. So they will leave quickly, which is good for them, but also good for the company too. So commission only, or a heavy favoring towards commissions. So as you're doing more of these calls yourself in the very beginning, you start to record yourself. And you always do it with the permission of the person you're talking to, of course. So I would usually say something like, hey John, before we get started, do you mind if I just record this call just for my own training purposes, or just for my own use later on? So you'll get a verbal agreement that it's okay. So I'd be recording the call on Skype, and I would just use a Skype recorder plugin to do that. Just Google that and you'll find them. And after a while, I would actually build up this library of calls that resulted in a successful sale. So when I was doing this, it was late 2010, early 2011. And after I'd got about, say, 20 recordings of successful sales calls, and I was selling a $2,000 price point, I went and I hired my first phone sales rep. Now what's going to happen is when you bring someone on board to do this for you, they're probably not going to be as good as you, okay? Especially after you've had some practice. So your closing ratios might go down. You might be at, say, 25%, and it might go down to say 20%. But that's okay, because as you get other people doing it, now the business isn't so dependent upon you. Now it's much more scalable, and now it frees you up to focus on higher leverage activities like driving more leads, more prospects through your customer acquisition process, or optimizing the entire customer acquisition process, optimizing the back-end conversions and so on. That's what you want to be focused on. Okay, you don't want to be the person making the sales one-on-one, otherwise you're not going to be able to scale. It's okay if you do that in the beginning, but you want to get yourself out of that function as soon as is humanly possible. So you're recording all of these calls. You go and place your first ad to get your first sales rep. You explain what you're looking for. You talk about the commissions that you're willing to pay. In my case, I was paying somewhere around 15%, okay, and I still do. It really depends on what role they do, but our standard phone sales reps will get about 15%. But when I first started, I was actually paying more. I was paying over 20% because I didn't yet have proven lead flow and a proven business. It was more risky for the more talented phone sales reps to leave their stable position wherever they were and come and work for a newer company where they couldn't see anyone else yet in that role getting results. These days, if we have someone who's coming on board, we can show them dozens and dozens of sales reps, and we can talk about what the average earnings are. So we also pay a little bit less. But 15%, 10%, again, it really depends on lead quality and your margins, but choose what's going to work with you. Here's my advice, and this is advice I wish I'd had. If you're thinking of two different amounts, start with the lower commission. Okay, always start with the lower commission, and if you need to move it up later on, you can. Okay, no phone sales rep is ever going to complain about you moving up their commissions. But when you do cut their commissions, when you do go from a higher commission to a lower, believe me, you're going to hear about it. My big mistake when I started out is that I was paying way too much. At one point I was paying somewhere around 25%, which looking back in hindsight, that was insane. There was no way that we could actually make a profit with that. And every time we had to move it down, no matter how we explained it, it always hurts for a sales rep to have their commissions cut. So always start at the lower amount that you're thinking, and then if you need to, you can always move up. Now, the other thing you want to do with all those recordings you've got, have them transcribed and turned into scripts, and you can use that in your training library. Start to build up an actual training library. Okay, this is going to be one of the most important parts in determining whether you actually have a scalable business or not. In fact, at the Titanium Mastermind, which is all about scaling, this is one of the really key points that we focus on. Documentation, training, so that you can bring on more people into your company, and you don't have so much knowledge stored in people's heads. If you have all the knowledge about how to do sales effectively stored in your head, well then that's okay if you only have 1 or 2 sales reps, because you can verbally tell them. But what happens when you have 15 sales reps, you're doing multiple 6 figures, and you want to get to 7 figures, and you've got to go and hire another 10. You're going to be spending a lot of time explaining to a lot of different people how to do the role. So start documenting your training. Do it early on. Let's talk about hiring managers. So I hired my first sales manager in 2014 it was. I'd never had a sales manager before. I was the sales manager. And at that point, I had about 10 sales reps. But it was taking up more and more of my time. And what you will learn about sales reps is that your very best sales reps, the very top performers, often can also be the most difficult people to imagine. That's just the way it is. And if you've ever worked with salespeople before, you will know that to be true. Part of what makes them so great is they are very driven often, and this is me generalizing here, but often they can have an ego, and that's all part of it. You will soon learn that, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have them on your team. You definitely should, but they are going to require a little bit more time and more attention. One of my former sales managers said to me, and I didn't say it, he said this, but he said, running a sales team is a little bit like sometimes running a daycare center. So I hope I haven't offended any salespeople out there, but that's how it can be. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, and it requires a lot of time and energy is my point. So at one point, you are going to need to get a sales manager. So how do you find one? Well, first of all, your sales manager might not necessarily be the best sales rep. In fact, your very top performers, the ones who get the highest results, the highest conversions, often make terrible managers. And I know this from experience. I've tried to have my very top salespeople become managers, and that's just not who they are. They are not people who will be looking at all the details, working well, managing other people. Your star performers often don't make the greatest managers. So the manager that you hire, ideally they're able to work with difficult personalities. Again, I'm just being honest, you're going to have quite a few of them in your sales team if you build a large enough sales team. They're able to handle that. They have a high empathetic score in their personality, so they're able to listen, understand. They're able to think in terms of numbers because they're going to be allocating the leads. They need to be a detail-oriented person. They need to be someone who's going to follow up and check quality control. This is very important because once you start getting large lead flow going, you start having a lot of sales coming in, you've got to be watching, you've got to be monitoring that at all times the sales teams are doing the right thing, everything is above board. So you need a manager who's going to check the details. Every so often they're going to be doing random audits, they're going to be calling back clients, making sure they had the right experience going through the sales process. So you need someone who's able to do all of that. Look for someone with experience. Okay, so the first person I hired, they had experience running sales teams before. And when it comes to compensating them, here's my advice. When I first started, at least for almost a year, when I had my first sales manager, I didn't want to pay them a percentage of revenue. I just didn't, because I thought, well, what happens when we're doing triple the revenue we're doing right now? I'm going to be stuck paying these insane wages out to this person. They might not be doing necessarily 3 times the amount of work. I've actually had a slight change in heart, and it didn't take too long either. I mean, it took me about a year before I realized that actually, no, I want to be incentivizing the sales manager so that they are paid on performance. So what I did in the first maybe 8 months, I had my first sales manager getting a flat base. They would get paid on salary, but after 10 months, I switched that to a percentage. And when I first did this, they were actually getting half a percentage of all the revenue brought in by the sales team, okay, half a percentage. And that number for you, it's going to be very different likely. It really depends on your margins, your business model, but that's where I started off. And I also had to guarantee a minimum every month as well, which I was fine with doing. So my big advice is incentivize them, and by doing that, they're going to be on your side. They're going to want to see sales maximized. Also penalize them on refunds that are caused by sales reps who made sales in cases where they probably shouldn't have. Okay, so again, it's all about just incentivizing them to act in your best interest and the company's best interest as well. I also want to talk about protecting your intellectual property. So as you're generating leads, you're going to have other people, your sales reps, having access to those leads and calling them. And you want to make sure that at all times, they're only contacting those customers through the appropriate channels. So for example, our sales team are only supposed to email our customers from a MOB email address. Okay, so it's coming from our internal email platform. You also want to make sure that they are never, ever, ever selling products that your business doesn't offer. They should only be promoting your products, your services. So you really need to be watching this, because I can tell you from experience over the past 5 years, some, not all, but some sales reps that you have, they're going to be tempted and they are going to sell things on the side. I can tell you many cases where this happened, and I would usually find out about it one way or another. And as soon as you do find out about it, that person has to be cut. Okay, they have to be cut because number one, you need to send a message to all of your sales team that you don't tolerate that. It is theft. That's what it is. They are stealing data that you paid good advertising dollars to generate. So you need to send a very clear message that that's not allowed and that is completely unacceptable. Have them sign an agreement that they won't do that. Get a lawyer to actually draft up an agreement that we call it a non-solicitation agreement. They won't be selling product services outside of your business, and also it makes very clear what the penalties are, which is termination basically. They will have to leave, won't be able to work for your company ever again. I had a case where even though I had all the agreements in place, I had a case where we had a phone sales rep actually download a list of our leads, of our buyer leads, about 8,000 of them. And these were very valuable leads. And he went ahead and sent out an email. This was almost 2 years later, okay, almost 2 years later after he'd got the list. And right away I heard about it because many of the customers I'd met, they knew who I was, I knew them. So within about 24 hours, I'd been emailed by about 5 or 10 people telling me, how did this person get my email address? So right away we took legal action, and it actually, we ended up winning. We actually settled. So my point of telling you that is, in this case, the person who did it was a very honest person that I had trusted. And if you'd told me that they were going to do this, I wouldn't have even believed you until I saw it was actually true. They were about the last person that I would ever expect to do it. So I'll give you some advice that a mentor gives me repeatedly. Just about every month he likes to tell me this. He says, if you want to keep honest people honest, have a check and a balance. If you want to keep honest people honest, have a check and have a balance. In other words, even the people that you think are honest, that you can trust, even good people, they're human. They're going to be tempted to sometimes take shortcuts, go for the easy money. They will be tempted to do that. Even good people are. So always have checks in your process. Here's one way that you can protect yourself. Within your database of leads, you can plant leads, okay, fake leads that actually go to you. So it could be someone else's name with your phone number, so that if that person ever gets contacted, well then you know right away, you know that something is being done wrong. So within our own internal list, we have a lot of planted leads in there so that if anyone ever does get that list and contacts them illegally or outside of the rules, we know about it very quickly. So as far as hiring reps, I'll show you what we do. Here's a Mob case study. So on our website, mob.com, you can go there and you can see all of this for yourself. But under our different jobs that we offer, we have Division 2, which is sales and traffic. And we have all the different people who are currently doing phone calls for us. And we say, would you like to join our team? So people can go ahead. We actually have them submit a video application. So they have to make a short video, put it on YouTube. It's what we call a video resume. They send it in and then we follow up. At least our sales manager follows up. Now, when they actually come onto our staff, they go through the onboarding process. And the first thing that they do is they go through our level 1 training hat, our level 1 sales training hat. We call it a hat because everyone in the company has a hat or a function. Okay, in other words, it's like a job description. And I won't go into this too much. We go into a lot of this at the Titanium Mastermind because, again, this is all about scaling. What I'm showing you right now, this is how I was able to take my company from doing 7 figures well into the 8 figures. This is what made all the difference, documenting everything, policies, procedures, and all of that. So we had the whole thing documented so that a brand new rep, they can learn where the leads come from, what the main questions are. They can hear recordings that I've done in the past where I got permission from the client. They can see all of that, and it just saves us having to spend 4 hours trying to train someone one-on-one on the phone. They go to our training document and they can get all the answers they need right there, and then they can get started calling. Let's talk about structure of a sales call. Every sales call that you or your reps are doing, they will develop a structure. Now, I want to just tell you about a quick case study here, just so you can understand the point. So when I was first doing sales calls back in 2009, I started to develop a structure in my call. I was selling a product, well, later on I went on to sell a product called the MOB License Rights Program. And back then it was $2,000. I would call back a $97 continuity buyer, and my main structure of the call was, first, I'd ask them all about traffic, because I was selling a marketing system they could use to generate commissions online. So I would ask them about traffic. And most of the time they didn't know a lot about traffic, so I would teach them some different ways they could get traffic. And then I would say, here's the formula for making money online. Traffic plus conversions equals sales. You need traffic and you need conversions. So I'd explain traffic in the first part of that structure. Then I would transition into talking about conversions. So this is where I would explain having the right business model, having the right sales funnel, basically saying to them, look, you need a customer acquisition process. Do you have one? And most of the time they did not, because they were just starting out. So that's there when I would then introduce the MOB License Rights Program, okay, which again was $2,000. And provided that I'd done a good job explaining the importance of why they obviously needed traffic, and most of them knew that part, but also why the customer acquisition process was by far the very most important part of that whole equation. As long as I'd done a good job of that, they would always be very open to getting my system. They didn't have one. So that's how I started to structure my calls. And I perfected that through just doing lots and lots of calls, 4 or 5 a day. And each one might go for about 30 minutes. And then, like I said before, I started to record them, built up my training library, and then that's when I started hiring phone reps. So let's talk about live event as another follow-up strategy. Doing live events may or may not fit your business model, but with enough creativity, you can usually make it fit any business type. So live events is something that I've really got into in the last few years, and first it was phone sales. That was the big revenue producer, but when I added in live event sales, that has become equally as big as the phone sales in my own company. And a lot of companies out there who use live events, once they dial it in, it can be very profitable. Now, the overheads to put on live events are not cheap, okay? They're not cheap. So you really need to know what you're doing. I'm going to share with you some strategies so that you can make sure that you have the maximum chance of succeeding with them. Let me actually show you some real numbers, because no one ever shows you the real numbers of live events. These are the actual real numbers. This is from a profit and loss statement from one of our 3-day live events. Now, let me give you the background here. This 3-day live event, we call it the Home Business Summit in our model. And the way it works is we promote our preview event, which is a 90-minute free event. We do twice a day for 3 or 4 days straight. And then about 10 days later, the people who brought the ticket get to attend the 3-day paid event. Now, this is, like I said, this is the profit and loss statement, and let me just zoom in here and I'm going to take you through the numbers just so you can see what it looks like. Now, this was a successful event. It wasn't extremely profitable, but it did okay. So let me walk you through this. So the first thing you're going to notice, total revenue was $99,122, and we were selling several products there: titanium, platinum, diamond was also offered at this particular one. Our total cost of sales was almost $35,000. Now you might be wondering, well, what makes up the biggest part of your cost of sales? Your biggest cost is usually going to be the hotel, okay, because you've got to go and rent out a seminar room. It's going to be staff. If you start putting on big live events, you're going to need to have sales reps, you're going to need to have speakers. And I realize that if you're just starting out in business right now, you might not be thinking anywhere near beyond the level of you doing live events. When I first started in 2008, this was about the last thing I ever thought I would be doing. I never thought I'd be doing live events. But I'm just sharing this with you because one day you may be doing live events. And again, if you get them right, they can be extremely profitable. So like I said, You've got the hotel cost, staff cost. If you have to start flying in staff, then it can really start to add up. You've got to watch those flights. But one of your biggest costs is going to be the marketing. That's getting people to actually show up to the preview event, which again is the free, usually 1-2 hour event that you do for 3 or 4 days, twice a day. That's going to be one of your biggest costs. Now, we're usually doing direct mail, we're doing radio ads, we're doing internet. I'll show you a few of those in just a moment, but that's how we're getting people to show up to the preview event, and then a speaker there sells the 3-day event. And in our case right now, it's $497. In this case, we paid our speaker a little bit over $5,000, staff base almost $1,500. You can see we had airfare cost, we had our general expenses, we had our, again, more staff wages and per diem. Per diem means that we pay them a base for food, for drinks each day, and it's paid at half the rate on travel days. Fulfillment costs for the products, and then also commissions that we're paying out to our affiliates, which in this case you can see was quite a bit. The entire profit you can see here was quite good. So that's when it's done right. But what happens when it doesn't go so well? Well, you can actually lose quite a bit of money. And I'm just showing this to you because I want to be entirely open with you about the reality of event-based marketing. This is why I say to you that you should always start small, on a small scale, and then scale up. If you've never done a live event before, don't go renting out the ballroom in the Hilton right in the middle of your downtown city area on a peak day and commit to the biggest ballroom they've got. Okay, you start off small. The very first live event that I ever did, I went to a local university about 30 minutes away from where I lived. I rented out a room for about $200. I rented a projector. I think they charged me another $40, and I promoted it on meetup.com for free. And I got maybe about 6 people there, and that was my very first live event. No staff, it was just me. So start off on a small scale and then scale up over time. So in this case, as you can see, our costs were way above what our revenue was, and we went on to lose a lot of money. In this case, it was in the tens of thousands of dollars. So as I said before, this is our model. We've got our preview event, which is called for us the I Am Freedom Workshop. And below this video, I'm going to put links to all of this so you can go and see it. You can see how it works. And then we have our 3-day training event, which is called the Home Business Summit. Now, our main Ascension program starts off at Silver, which you've gone through. Silver is one of our core products. Gold is one of our core products, what you're going through right now. And we have Titanium, Platinum, and Diamond. At our live event, yes, we offer a lot of different products and services, but we focus on our core products. I'm going to suggest to you that in your business, you have a core line of products that gets the majority of your focus. What you shouldn't do is you shouldn't spread your marketing efforts over lots and lots of different products that don't necessarily sell that well. You should take your very best sellers, make them into your core products. Look for the 20% that produces the 80% of your revenue and your profits, and tailor your marketing around those products. Now you can see we also have a lot of other events that we do in all kinds of different categories. Traffic, we have one on asset protection, real estate investing. Many of these additional events come included as part of the Titanium and the Platinum Mastermind, and also as part of the Diamond Mastermind as well. But the main focus is actually on our front-end events, which is our preview event, which leads into our main 3-day event. Here's an example of the registration page. It's quite simple. We have the location, dates at the top. We have the event logo over on the left at the top as well. And then we have the main headline, free live event, how to create a full-time income in your spare time and gain your freedom from the rat race. Now, our call to action shows the different hotels we're going to be at 2 times a day. So in our case, 12:30 and 6:30 p.m. That changes depending on what market we're in. Sometimes we might be in a different market, say Singapore, and they might have a different preference over times. So it's just a matter of testing in each main market you go into. Start off in your local market, because you'll know your local market, and then you can start going across your country and possibly even worldwide. Now, our preview events are held in different hotels, and the reason why we do that is we target within a certain area. We like to target pockets. So we might be targeting a big circular area that's 10 miles in diameter. But we will pick 3 or 4 hotels spread equally within that circle area, and that's where we will do our preview event. So our team rents a car and they're driving from one to the next each day. Two a day, 2 events a day in each hotel. So they go ahead and register, they get a confirmation by email. We also will usually send them a ticket in the mail, just because those extra little bits of follow-up that you do increase the show factor, the number of people who actually turn up. And we will also do confirmation calls. So we have a call center that will actually call them and just remind them about the upcoming event. Now, part of the reason why we have such a great affiliate program in Mo, where we have people join our affiliate program and they're actually called consultants, is because they get to leverage all of this. We do all of this for them. All they have to do is send traffic, and all of this is being done for them. Here's one of the ways that we actually promote this preview event. And I'm going to play this for you just so you can hear it. This is a radio ad. So we rent radio space in the local area. And to get into radio advertising, you will need to have a budget of at least, say, $5,000 to $10,000. So this sometimes will come a little bit later, once you're more confident that you've got a good sales presentation that actually converts. But here's my radio ad.
Hey, are you ready to make $10,000 to $15,000 a month marketing on the internet? Well, get ready. Hi, I'm Matt Lloyd, founder of Mobe, the world's premier internet marketing and training company, and I want to teach you how to make thousands of dollars online working part-time from home. I just finished creating an exclusive fast-track kit which contains a step-by-step ebook guide and video series that will show you how simple and easy it is to make money online with my system. And I want to give it to you for free. You can do this from home and you can start making money immediately.
To get your free Fast Track Kit, which contains your free ebook and videos, call 1-800-332-2609. Call in the next 10 minutes and you will also get 2 free tickets to a live Internet Freedom Workshop coming to the Phoenix area. All this is a $395 value that you can get for free, but you need to call 800-332-2609. That's 800-332-2609. Call now.
Now, in addition to that, we also promote it online. So I want to show you a few of our different online sales funnels just so you can see how it works. These are our banner ads. We put our banner ads all throughout our marketing. And when people click on our banner ads, they get to see all the different countries that we're doing these live events in, and then pick their country that's closest to them or where they actually live. This is our direct mail, so we're doing this in addition to our online marketing. We also have affiliates who promote it as well. So this is the affiliate back office. If you're a Mobe consultant or an affiliate, then you can actually log in, you can get your link, and you can be promoting our preview events and our 3-day events. So we get a lot of people who come to our live events because our affiliates promoted it. But here's an example of one of our online funnels. So it starts off with a quiz. People click on the button that says Start Quiz. And the question is having your own online business right for you? This free 4-question quiz will help you decide if you have what it takes. And it also says score over 50% and win a ticket to the I Am Freedom Workshop $199 value. Now, we share with them what they're going to get when they show up to the live event. In this case, they get a free copy of my book called Limitless, and they also get a few other things as well. Which trait best describes your work habit? So they choose self-starter, work alone, easily distracted. Whatever they choose, it takes them to a different page. How would you describe your work personality? Enjoy working with others, enjoy working alone. Do you have a quiet space for working at home? So it's all very easy to answer. You want this whole process, whatever you have, to be almost effortless. Now, this is a slightly more advanced process. This is a quiz, and this was put together over some time. When you're starting out, it's going to be much simpler. You're going to have a very simple registration page, and they're going to choose date and time. You very likely will only have one date and time. They register, and then they turn up. Keep it simple in the beginning. What I'm sharing with you here, this is a more advanced way that you can do it, that you can work up to. What is your primary job motivation? So money, admiration, flexibility, doing my job well. And then at the very end, it says, enter your email to see your results and be entered in the giveaway. So they would enter in their email address, and that's where we would tell them, hey, you can now show up to our live event. You scored 80% and you're going to get a free copy of the book. And it would tell them all the different options they have available to actually show up to the live event. And here it is here. They can see the hotel, dates, times. They enter in their name, phone number, email address. So this now becomes a much better lead. And then they start getting email reminders and they show up. The next thing I want to talk about is adding in special promotions into your follow-up sequence. Now, having a special promotion, this is an easy way to bring in large amounts of cash in very short amounts of time. Now, what do you do your special promotions around? Well, there's lots of different things. Number one, you can do your promotion around having a discount. You can do it around scarcity. You could do it around a holiday. For example, it's Christmas, it's New Year's, it's your birthday, it's someone who's famous, their birthday. But you want to just be creative. Come up with reasons to give your customers a deal, okay, or some special offer where they can get bonus products or services thrown in. And you can also find and invent reasons to have a special promotion. So what I'm going to do, rather than going into this in too much detail in this video, I'm going to put in templates of different promotions that you can do in your manual. So make sure you read through that and ask yourself, how can I do this in my business right now? They're not hard to do, they're really not. And like I said, they can bring in large amounts of cash really quickly. Just a few examples. You can see even big companies do this. This is Pinterest. They're doing a special promotion where you can win a prize. So again, I will put this in your manual. Coke Zero doing a special promotion around Christmas. Expedia doing a special promotion around Christmas as well, and so on. You can also do a Facebook comment giveaway. Now this is a great way of doing a promotion. You ask a question on Facebook to your following, and then whatever comment gives the best answer, however you want to choose it, they get to win a prize. So that's a great example of a promotion you can do. Here's a contest that Oreo did. They said design a pack of Oreo cookies this holiday season and you can win. So just come up with ways that you can do contests. Just be creative. So we've covered a lot in this module. So where do you begin in taking action? Well, first of all, pick one, just one, and first focus on that. Here's some things that you can start doing right away. Number one, sales webinars. How can you add in sales webinars into your customer acquisition process? What I want you to do is I want you to go and do your very first sales webinar, and I want you to do it in the next 48 hours. Okay, in the next 48 hours, even if you haven't done one before, you don't know what you would talk about, you think it's too technical, you don't think you can do it, I want you to just try. I do this at all our live seminars when I'm teaching on webinars, and usually I don't give them 48 hours. I actually say to them, I want you to do it tonight. And usually around 25%, 30% of the room will actually go and do it. But the people who do it, they show up the next day and they're happy, they're excited about it, and they all comment that that wasn't as hard as I thought. So do your first webinar, even if you don't sell anything, just do it for the very first time, just so you can get comfortable. Now, after you've done it for the first time, start doing it again, start talking about your products, your services, and start to develop a presentation, a script on how you can sell. You start off by doing live sales webinars, and then you're going to be recording them so you can automate it later on. And again, below this video, you will find tutorials on how you can automate your very first sales webinar. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to think about how you can add in phone sales into your business. Now, maybe you don't like to sell. Maybe you don't like to sell face-to-face or on the phone, but I'm telling you, if you add in phone sales into your business, it can really help take you to the next level. The way that I introduced it into my business, because I didn't want to be cold calling or convincing, persuading people who just weren't interested, what I did is I actually offered a bonus 30-minute consult with one of my products so that when I got them on the phone, they already knew who I was, They were very receptive to the call, and it was never an uphill battle. It never felt like I was trying to persuade or convince them to do something they didn't want to do. So that's an easy, non-threatening way that you can introduce phone calls into your business. Start bundling in a phone call, a strategy session with your product. Maybe you show them how to use it, you give them some tips on how to get more benefits, but it's just another connection or touch point where you get to talk to your clients, find out more about them, what they want, and also, if appropriate, make a sale. Live events. Now, you might not think you're ready for live events yet, but I'm going to, again, just ask you to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. Could you do a live event in your local area, just a small live event? Could you join meetup.com, put together your own little meetup, have people register, put on your own live event, even if you were to meet up in a restaurant or at a local bar? Okay, that's also how I got started. Local little meetups where we would actually go and meet up over a meal, and there might be just 4 of us. But you start to get used to having your own live events. That's how it begins, and then over time you can scale up and you can do what I was showing you with the preview model and then the 2 or 3 day live event. So how can you introduce live events into your business model? And then last of all, what special promotion can you put together in the next 30 days? In fact, what special promotion could you do in the next 7 days? I want you to think of a reason that you can do a promotion, come up with an email around it, send it out, however you market to your current audience, and just go ahead and do it. Just try it. Okay, so I hope you got a lot of value out of this module, and I will see you in Module 5.